very well documented, very well written. So only 75% to a maximum of 85% of the regression scripts can be automated. I've not seen an automation which could cover all the 100% regression scripts. Well, the next slide would display some of the you can say characteristics or yardsticks which you can use to see whether you actually need automation in your application or not. So the first step to determine that you actually need an automation is to define the testing scope. You should be very clear on the scope of your testing, because each organization believes that it in its own requirements in the software test automation. So considering the organization's requirements, test automation activities can be performed with 3 different kind of scopes. I've just highlighted 3 scopes because I've just broadly classified all, the majority of the organization's work in these 3 scopes. That is enterprise-oriented. Enterprise-oriented means that the test automation is done to support different product lines and projects in the organization. So there's one automation strategy, and it will support all the different product lines and the projects in the organization because they work in a very similar kind of architecture. The next one is the product-oriented approach. The product-oriented means that the test automation activities focus towards specific product line of the application. So for every product line, they have a different automation strategy. And the third strategy or the third approach, which is quite common in the organizations, is the project-oriented. In the project-oriented strategy, the test automation effort focus towards a specific project. It is different for each and every project. So you need to identify that what is the strategy that your organization is using and your organization is used to, and then is your project ready a good candidate for testing, first of all. So we need to identify the testing scope. The next step is to identify the testing needs, and what exactly do you need to test. So once the testing scope is identified, the testing scope, the testing needs to be identified. So based on the application's requirements, types of testing that need to be performed are identified. So basically, if we have the requirement that we need to test the system, but what type of testing strategies would we would use? For example, like I was mentioning, the enterprise-oriented testing strategy. For example, in that enterprise-oriented testing strategy, in testing scope, product A would require a functional testing, and product B would require a web service testing, product C would require a performance testing, and so on. So every product will have a different requirements or different needs of testing. So we have to differentiate this thing, that if a product B is requiring just load testing, so we cannot use functional automation, or we cannot do any kind of functional testing in that particular product. Going to the next step is the automation needs. So the testing requirements and their nature is studied for the application. Each application has its own actions or validations for testing. So let me take an example. For example, we have a scenario that we have an application for which we need to do form validation functionalities, database validation, and accessibility functionalities needs to be validated. So we can very well say that if we need to do some kind of form level validations or database level validations, so these we can easily do the automation. So in that case, we can mark this test case or maybe the test scenario as it can be automatable. So for example, let's say another example is that for an application, all the web service methods needs to be validated. So this would also include the delay time for the request response from the third-party systems. So we generally categorize these kind of needs and say that what all scenarios can be automated. The next step is to identify a tool or the automation tool. So we have to take the automation tool which can be useful in our own types of applications. So I will be talking about the entire evaluation process in much more detail towards the end of my presentation. So maybe we can take up this point over there. The last point is the automation feasibility. Once we have done the entire analysis in this particular step, we can actually say that how much percentage of our testing can be automated. So every tool has its own limitations, and once we conduct all the feasibility study, we evaluate that, okay, what we think that can be automatable, but however there is no such tool in the market which can automate this particular functionality. So we have to take the tools also into the consideration, and we need to do a proper feasibility analysis. So once this feasibility study is complete, it would result in listing the requirements that can be automated. Also, based on the nature of the requirements, the automation feasibility needs to be identified, and this is a very important